So after that, we'll have some more up-to-date stuff. But the firemen's pension fund is basically the firemen's retirement fund that they have. So this slide is just showing the history of our contribution rates. On the left side is the city's contribution. On the right side is the members' contribution. So the firemen put in this amount of money. The city puts in this matching amount of money, basically. So you can see the city, since 2017, we have consistently upped our contribution rates. And the reason for that is because you can see down here at the bottom, the unfunded actuarial accrued liability. That's a lot of kind of scary words, and those are some kind of scary numbers. But I just want to talk to you a little bit about what that means. So basically, those numbers, that 15.7 million is a look at, okay, at this point in time, what do we think we're going to have to pay out in order to fully fund this retirement fund for these existing members that we have currently in the fund, those who have retired. How long are we making out these payments? How long are their spouses living? A lot of different things like that go into it. So our actuary comes in every few years and updates those things, and then that changes, how much do we feel like we need to put into this in order to keep that number at a reasonable level to where we'll actually be able to fund this when the time comes. So what we want to see is that liability ideally going down every year. Of course, as our base continues to grow, as you have more firemen, as the city grows, that number will get bigger and it'll fluctuate some. But the planned fiduciary net position as a percentage of total pension liability, basically that's saying how much are we funded at this point. So our most recent number is 47.6% funded. So obviously the higher that number is, the more funded you are. So obviously you would like to be fully funded. That's not a realistic thing that really will ever happen unless you're a very small fund and you have few members that'll be drawing from that. So the last time that we made any changes to our inputs as far as what our actuary looks at and how they come up with those numbers, how funded are we and what is our liability, we lowered our investment return assumption. That's one of the inputs, and the reason why we did that is because if you're saying, hey, this fund and these invested funds are making 8% and they're not actually making that, you're going to have a big problem in the future when you get 20 years down the road. You haven't been making 8% for all those 20 years, so your fund didn't do what you assumed it was going to do. So our actuary suggested for us to start lowering that assumption to something that's more reasonable. If there's anybody who's getting 8% every year consistently on invested funds, I would love to know who that is and where that is, because I would love to put my money there. But we lowered that a little bit to make that a more realistic assumption. Second thing we did, obviously, is increase the city's side of our contribution from 19.3% to 21.3%. And some of that is to offset, obviously, the change in assumption. If we're going to be making less return on these funds, we're going to have to invest more to make up for that, and also to improve the funded status. So basically, who looks at this every year, we have to submit a report to the Pension Review Board of Texas that looks at this stuff for all of the participating entities and cities in the state, and they basically look at it every year, and that's kind of to prevent cities from accruing these huge unsustainable liabilities that we'll never be able to fund. So they do look at that every year, and we do have to submit it every year. And this information isn't on the slide, but one of the biggest things they look at is the amortization period. What that means is how many years is it going to be before you are fully funded. I think there's 11 entities in the state that number is infinite. And what that means is they're never going to be funded. There are some cities that number is 0. So we fall right in the middle. Our most recent number is 40.7 years. They want you to be between 30 and 40 years. So if you are longer than 40 years, basically they make you submit a plan as to how you're going to fix it, and then they'll revisit that every year when your reporting period comes. So our goal is to reduce that number of years to 30. That's their kind of ideal. They say if you're at 30 years amortization period, then you're doing great. So every time we go through this actuarial study, we kind kind of trying to determine, what steps do we need to take this year to get us a little bit closer to that goal. You can only move the needle so little at a time for, the size and magnitude of the numbers that you're talking about here. So our goal is to reduce that. We'll be looking at that next month. August 10th is when our actuary, as well as our auditor for this fund, will actually be visiting us at the Pension Review Board, and they'll get us some updated numbers. They'll be completing another study to update things like mortality rate, how long are people staying, how long are people paying into this fund, how long are they drawing out, and different things like that. So as of 12/31/2019, this is kind of what the fund base looked like. Number of people currently receiving benefits as of that date was 66 people, and then active members are 59. So that's kind of where you create the disconnect, is when you have 66 people drawing out, 59 people putting in, there's a gap there, and that's what creates that unfunded liability and the problem. So, any questions? I'd be lying if I told you he was on that board. I don't know. I do not. Yeah, I don't know.
She's saying it's 66 paying
No,
out.
that's okay.
And they only got 59 paying in. That's a gap. Somebody losing money, something.
Sir, Mayor, Council, I tried to, what I did with this is for some of you, I know some of y'all are new, maybe you'll learn a little bit about what we do over there. So I kind of geared it that direction. That's actually the department. I'm the director. We have a planner now. Yeah, it's up there, Latora. She does our GIS also, and then we have two secretaries. One is the executive secretary, and we have a permitting clerk. Steve Cockrum's our property maintenance specialist, and that's a new position we created a year or two ago. And I'll talk about these as we get on down. We have two code officers at the present time. We have a full-time building inspector that just stays at L3. And there's reasons for that, is because what they do out there, if it comes through my office, it's public record, it stays out there. So I see John about once a month, maybe. He comes in, and then currently have a vacant position now of a building inspector, which is quite a bit of a challenge for us. Which, if you see me most of the time out of this setting, I'll have jeans on and I'm out on the street again. So I'm kind of having fun with it, but we do need to get somebody, and that's been a challenge to find somebody to do that job. And by the way, he left for a couple of bucks an hour. I know the benefits were about the same. Sadly, that's just what they do these days. Public health, Marla Dorset, and then we have the lot abatement crew, which is run by Russell Rice, and I currently have an opening there also. These guys are part-time. They work 28 hours a week. They do most of the mowing that you see around town. These are the departments that we actually run out of community development, which is the planning, which does planning and zoning, which you guys will see from time to time. We do building permits and the inspections, actual code enforcement. Then we have the lot abatement, sanitation, public health comes through our office also, and GIS. We do that there also. Some of the roles and responsibilities of the department, of course, review of zoning